Thanks for joining me once again for another nutrition education video. My name is Sean Egglestone and I'm a registered dietitian, and today we are going to be focusing on the question, why do people get healthier on unhealthy diets? You hear these stories of people having all sorts of disease reversal and their symptoms go away when they switch from whatever diet they were on onto a diet centered around animal products. And if you've seen any other videos on my channel, you know that I am a huge proponent of diets centered around whole plant foods. I'm not telling you to go vegan. I'm just saying that when the majority of your food comes from fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds, and beans, we have the best health outcomes, short-term and long-term, with diets centered around whole plant foods compared to those diets centered around animal products such as paleo, keto, or carnivore. Now, there are many people that are switching to these animal-centered diets, yet they're having these amazing health benefits. Why is this happening? And that's because their diet that they're following now isn't as bad as the diet they were following originally. It doesn't make the keto, the paleo, or the carnivore diet healthy in and of its own right. It just means that their original diet was even worse. And based on my research, most of the benefits that we see with these animal-centered diets come from the fact that they are consuming fewer calories. So in the presence of weight loss, almost regardless of what kind of diet you're following, if it results in weight loss, for the most part, you're going to see health benefits, and that's systemically around the entire body. Now, a diet has many different parts, okay? It's got your macronutrients, like your carbs, your fats, your proteins. It's got fiber, it's got antioxidants, it's got phytonutrients, protective plant compounds, it's got sugar, it's got oil, cholesterol, sodium. There's all different components of a diet. And so to gain health benefits from a diet, it just has to have more things good about it than bad. And that's basically what you see when you switch to, like, say, a ketogenic diet, and you cut out sugar and white flour and the additional calories that people typically get from snack foods that are carb centered, as well as some other maybe carbohydrate containing beverages like soda, and you start consuming animal foods, and you do so at a lower calorie level, you're going to see more improvements, especially when we look at things like fibromyalgia or rheumatoid arthritis or diabetes, for example. When you lose weight, fat starts to be mobilized out of your liver, out of your pancreas, out of your muscles, and you see an improvement in your blood sugars. And of course, if you're not consuming any carbs, you're also going to have improvements in your blood sugars. But it also goes on the flip side. Why are there unhealthy vegetarians? Can you be an unhealthy vegan? And that's absolutely the case because, again, sugar and soda and white flour are vegan, vegetarian. You can consume those foods, and that doesn't necessarily make you healthy. Now, even though people can get short-term benefits on these animal-centered diets, it's important to keep in mind that one of the major benefits to plant-centered diets is its reduction in your cancer risk. And this is not something that you can appreciate in a short period of time. People might see benefits in a period of 1 to 3 months, 6 months, and I've even had comments from people that have followed a carnivore diet for 2 years. Now, besides the fact that you have to supplement with vitamin C and a whole host of other things to actually make that diet nutrient dense, the benefits that we're getting with plant-centered diets, among the many benefits that you get, one of the most important, in my opinion, is its reduction of cancer. And that's something that you can't test at the doctors. It doesn't show up on your lipid panel. It doesn't show up on your blood sugar results. And it's not something that you can feel on a day-to-day basis or weigh on the scale. But a diet that's centered around animal foods can increase your risk for things like colon cancer, and that's just not something that the doctor can test right away. And even if you have a normal colonoscopy, the thing is, cancer can take decades to build. We know that with breast cancer, for some of those slower growing tumors, that it can take up to 10 years before a mammogram even shows any signs of a tumor. So, we can see a reduction in inflammation because sugar is inflammatory. So you cut out sugar, you cut out calories, you're going to get an improvement. Now, just because people get healthier does not make that these animal-centered diets healthy, and it certainly doesn't mean that every part of the diet is healthy either. We know from the Mediterranean diet that the Mediterranean diet is healthy. A lot of people get benefits from it, and it's better than most other diets out there. However, we can do studies that isolate out every part of the Mediterranean diet. And what do we find? The health benefits associated with the Mediterranean diet, such as improved risk for things like diabetes and cardiovascular disease and stroke, come from the fruits, the vegetables, the whole grains, the beans, the nuts, and the seeds. The benefits are independent of the fact that people consume fish and they consume oil. Those two parts of the Mediterranean diet do not infer the same protection as the other components. Now, I can do a whole other video on the Mediterranean diet. It's long-winded, but that's the gist. And just because people get healthy on animal-centered diets doesn't negate the fact that plant-centered diets are even healthier, especially when we look at something like cancer risk reduction. Now, if you look in the 1970s, the average American had 320 out of 100,000 people were dying from cardiovascular disease. Comparing that to the Inuits, the Eskimos, we see that they had around 80 to 85 people per 100,000 were dying from cardiovascular disease. So what do people assume? They assume that following a diet high in seal blubber and meat and low in plant foods protects you against cardiovascular disease. Just because it's better than the standard American diet does not make it healthy, because at the same time period, we look at Okinawa, Japan, and they had cardiovascular disease rates around 30 people per 100,000. So 10 times fewer than the average American, and almost a third of what we were seeing in these native Eskimos. Now, I will say this, around the Paleolithic period, we do see some adaptations, some changes in our physiology. That does not make us optimal carnivores. That did not make us optimal meat eaters. We had 18 million years prior to the Paleolithic era that we consumed a diet of 95% plant foods, and then the early hominids still consumed a diet heavy in plant foods. Now, we were basically vegan, and then we adapted to consuming less high fibrous, rough tubers and grasses, and our dental enamel changed slightly because we were doing less chewing, and it's easier to chew meat than it is to chew wild grasses. But that doesn't mean that the Paleolithic diet is optimal for our health. We weren't able to do coronary angiograms on these people. We weren't able to look at their lipid panel. They didn't have a long life. All we have is like some skull fragments, some of their bones, and their enamel, their teeth. And we can do some carbon dating and an isotope analysis, but that doesn't really tell us much that the Paleolithic diet was healthy. Based on my research, it's not to say that that there were more changes physiologically, anatomically in the hominids during the last 2 million years compared to the 18 million years prior. So the argument for following a carnivore or a paleo diet is pretty weak. And again, when we relate that back to the Mediterranean diet, just because people see health benefits with the paleo diet doesn't mean that every aspect of the paleo diet confers optimal health. As always, the best diet for optimal health is a diet that's centered around whole plant foods such as fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. Thanks, guys, for watching. If you have any questions, you can leave comments down below. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want, you can go over to my website, SeanTheRD.com, and I've got additional content as well as recommended resources and recipes page. Cheers.